Sean Hickey joins us again from Profarmer Grain to update us on what's happening for our cropping farmers. Sean, thanks for joining us again.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me on.
Sean, look, we'll cast our eye overseas, first of all, some of the major drivers of what's happening for our cropping farmers. Let's maybe start with those trade negotiations, Australia and China. Could we see some hope on the horizon for our barley growers?
Yeah, that's right. So it's kind of been announced that Australian and Chinese officials are looking to meet in the next week to have a bit of a discussion on trade. It's kind of primarily been driven by that World Trade Organisation ruling. So that's actually due to come down next week as well. And I believe Australia and China have both received an interim report ahead of that final release. So that has kind of driven the two officials to perhaps meet and maybe knock out a bit of a solution to trade between the two countries, and it's certainly barley would be at the forefront of those discussions. So given that news and given the announcement of that meeting, we have seen global barley markets come off a little bit in the last week or so, particularly French barley, which is where China have kind of really focused their buying following the loss of the Australian barley market. So seeing those French barley prices come off a little bit, and if there is any positive news, then you'll certainly see a decent jump in Australian barley markets.
It's encouraging, very encouraging for our farmers that have put some barley in already or are already committed to go down that path with their planting. Some might be sticking with canola. We have heard there was a bit of a shift away from canola to barley. What are you hearing, and indeed what's happening in the canola market?
Yeah, so canola's certainly been an interesting one over the month of March. We obviously saw a really sharp dip of around about $100 a tonne, depending on your location, in those early weeks of March, and it's since jumped back up $50 a tonne. So there were a few drivers there. Obviously, there was some bearish economic sentiment in early March with the banking crisis. We've also seen some kind of improved European production forecasts in the earlier weeks as well, which kind of did really push some downwards pressure onto oilseed markets and canola markets generally. And then we've seen that kind of jump back up as, I suppose, people became a little bit less concerned about the economy, which kind of, I suppose, really gave that news that there was a little bit of an oversold tone in the market. So it certainly bounced back up. And then the announcement from OPEC that they're going to look to restrict crude oil production from May has also been bullish for canola. So a real jump back up in canola over the last couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see how that volatility has impacted growers' sentiments around planting. It's obviously a pretty important decision to make. But given those falling prices, that extra volatility, the high cost of canola seed, we expect a little bit of a rotation back to barley to be that trend. I think that's pretty widely anticipated. And then, as we discussed earlier, that news around potential discussions between China and Australia, also another positive for barley, rather. So probably more so pointing towards a decent drop-off in overall canola plantings and a decent pick-up in barley.
Yeah, that big word you mentioned there, rotation, is probably significant as well from an agronomic point of view. Some farmers just needing to give the paddock a spell and put some barley through it.
Yeah, that's right. We've obviously seen 2.5 years of really strong canola prices due to a number of reasons, but that's obviously encouraged growers to plant canola over the last couple of years, which has also helped to offset fertiliser costs and everything else. So there's no doubt that there'll be plenty of paddocks there that need to have that barley rotated through for a number of reasons. So that'll be another reason that you'll probably see the increase in barley plantings again this season.
And looking just lastly at wheat, I cast my eye over some of the major handlers. They were paying somewhere around $350 a tonne for the good stuff. But is there some signs on the horizon about what's going on in Russia and whether we could see some movement on wheat prices there?
Yeah, certainly that was kind of the big news over the last week or so, and there's obviously just been that confirmation that a number of the larger multinational grain buyers are going to be pulling out, including Viterra. So they're looking to exit Russia by July this year. It is interesting. It has added a little bit of strength to international markets, and that's probably more so just around that extra uncertainty that it probably adds to the Black Sea grain exports. There's obviously plenty of uncertainty around there as it is. So we don't expect any real drop-off in exports from Russia. They've obviously got that record wheat crop, but the general consensus is that you're going to see some local Russian traders take control of those grain exports. There's obviously still plenty of demand for wheat, particularly to the nations that Russia does typically export to. So we don't anticipate there to be any real drop-off in global wheat supply. But it is just adding a little bit to those global markets, and that's given that extra uncertainty that it just does tend to add.
Yeah, great connection there from what happens in the local paddock to what happens all over the world. Sean Hickey from Profarmer Grain, thanks for summing it all up for us here on Flow FM.
Anytime.